My name's Jess. I'm a biologist with EcoShore. We're an environmental consultancy. We work internationally, based in Australia. We specialise in human-animal conflict management. So today I'll be sharing some of our experiences with wild and domestic dogs and some of the dynamic processes that we've had to consider in our management programs. So I'll be sharing 3 case studies. They're from diverse systems across Oceania. They've all got different contexts, so it means that while there are similarities between them, they're all managed in slightly different ways. So we'll see if this... Oh. Okay. So the first is in Western Australia, in an arid environment managing dingo human conflict at a mine. The second is off Eastern Australia, managing dingoes in a recreational context. And the third is all the way over to the Central Pacific, managing domestic dogs in a community. So the dingo is Australia's naturalised wild dog. It's thought that they were brought to Australia about 4,000 or maybe longer ago years by the Asian seafarers, and they have evolved from an Asian variety of the grey wolf. Dingoes readily breed with domestic dogs, so genetic dilution is a real threat for the purity of our dingoes, and mainly around predation on livestock. They are considered a pest across much of Australia, and then there are some select areas where they're protected. So the first case study is from beautiful Fraser Island, or Gari, which means paradise in Aboriginal, the traditional owners of Australia. It's the largest sand island in the world, and it's World Heritage listed for its natural values, which include the dingo. So these are some quintessential images of Fraser Island. And here dingoes are isolated from domestic dogs, so it's one of the strongholds for our pure dingoes, and one of the few places as well that they're protected. More than 380,000 visitors come to Gari every year, many hoping to see these unique canids. That has led though to some really serious incidents with habituated dingoes, including the tragic death of a 9-year-old boy in 2001. So dingoes are a core of Fraser Island value. They have cultural significance to our traditional owners. They play a key role in the ecology of the island. And they attract many visitors to the island, which in turn brings money to the island, helps protect dingoes and their future there, and the other natural values of Fraser. Positive visitor experience also encourages environmental stewardship, which again protects the values there and also our dingoes. Sometimes though, the desire for a close encounter or the desire to help dingoes, which are naturally very lean and people can think that they're starving, can lead to people feeding them, which then leads to dingoes habituating to people and expecting food, and that can lead to aggressive behaviour, and we see that with wildlife all over the world. So habituated animals increases the number of incidents and triggers population management. So to reduce the amount of management that we actually need to direct at dingoes themselves, we really need to focus on the root of the problem, and as we've heard in this conference many times, it usually does start with us. So we need to focus on why visitors are feeding them, what are the drivers there. They want a close experience, a close encounter, and some of them feel like they need to help. So it's important for us to set expectations. These are wild animals that people should be happy to view them from a distance and keep them wild and keep them safe. And we also need to educate about their ecology and behaviour. It is natural that they're very lean. And our traditional owners can play a really valuable role in helping to educate people. So to the East Pilbara Desert in Western Australia, and a mine site. So a mine site in arid Australia provides a whole range of resources with shelter, water, and often human food. And in this particular mine, there are a number of dingo packs that live there. So again, starting with people, as our global population increases, so the need for resources and mining in Australia encroaches on dingo habitat. People in arid Australia provide resources, and more people and more dingoes means increased interactions and increased conflict. And at this mine, there were also several really serious incidents with habituated dingoes, and the human health and safety risk there meant that the mine operators had very low tolerance to dingoes living around the mine. So the population management strategy, it included a whole range of things to try and limit access to those artificial resources, and it also included broad-scale culls, which was partly because they're a declared pest in this state. That obviously has ethical and welfare implications, environmental impacts, because dingoes are very important to the ecology of our arid areas and across Australia. And when we looked at the data, we actually saw that it wasn't reducing conflict at all, and in fact there was an increase in incidents after these broad-scale culls. And we've seen, again, throughout the conference with domestic dogs, culling is ineffective, and in this situation, new dingoes quickly moved into the high valuable area, and these animals were also uneducated to acceptable behaviour, and they were creating new structure and new packs, and so fighting for dominance, and that increased the level of aggression in the population as well. So using these data, we were able to recommend against broad-scale culls and focus instead on trying to get people to do the right things so that we could avoid dingoes habituating in the first place, putting a whole range of environmental and engineering controls in place, and carefully monitoring as well individuals for signs of habituation, and if that was seen, try and reverse it with hazing, which they use for bears and wolves and things as well. Yeah, so hazing is often using rubber bullets and things, so it's not necessarily, it can be a little bit unpleasant, but it's just meant to deter problematic behaviour. So it's like a last resort before culling or removal of an animal. So that was the last resort before selective removal if the behaviour couldn't be reversed, but obviously focusing on avoiding getting to that point. Also increasing separation using hard fencing and geofencing with electric collars for problematic individuals. That's going to be trialled probably on Fraser Island. And that was in high risk areas. They're using hard fencing at this stage. So it's quite a new change to the program. We're not exactly sure what the outcomes are going to be, but we hope that an increase in welfare by avoiding animals becoming habituated, and improvements to environmental outcomes, and also conflict reduction and risk reduction. So the final case study is in Tuvalu. It's a small Polynesian nation about halfway between Australia and Hawaii. It's made up of 9 islands and around 11,500 people live there. This is the main island of Tuvalu, and if you zoom in to the widest part of the island, it's about 700 metres across, so space is very valuable. And in the middle you might be able to see there's a big long runway. That's Funafuti International Airport. It's a relic of World War II, and it's used to connect Tuvalu to the rest of the Pacific and the world. It's So they get about 3 flights a week at the moment, but with plans to increase that. And with space being so valuable, they have not fenced the airport. So the community uses it to transit and socialise and play sport. In the afternoon, all the volleyball nets come out, and the Tuvaluans also love their dogs, and there's about 1,000 free roaming owned dogs in that area as well. So that led to one strike where a dog was hit by a plane, and a lot of near misses, which obviously is not good for the dogs and has really serious safety implications. So that was the main reason why we were engaged to help with that risk. So again, the issue has started with humans. They like their dogs there. There are lots of dogs, but there's also limited vet availability there. There's competing focuses with the community. And there's also limited waste services, which means lots of food around, and all of these things together mean increasing dog populations, including stray dogs. So that has obvious welfare issues, increases the risk of zoonotic disease, the environmental impacts of unmanaged dog populations, and also other impacts like strike and aggression. So there is a need for dog population management, which obviously takes resources, and we've heard that especially in the long term, without an engaged and involved community, it's not going to be effective. So we needed to design a program that was going to be economically sustainable and justifiable for dog owners and the government. It needed to meet the cultural and lifestyle needs of the community, and it had to consider the environment. So, for example, if it was too onerous, would people start favouring cats, which would be very detrimental to the wildlife there and bring with it different zoonoses. On the other hand, potentially cats might control the huge number of rats there, which could have some overall benefits, but we didn't want to see that either, obviously, knowing that cats may bring more problems than an uncontrolled dog population. And at the heart of any DPM program, welfare was a top priority for us. And previously, welfare had not always been a top consideration, but the current program, it does consider all of these things and focuses on community engagement, free desexing, and responsible dog ownership. So to summarise, one size doesn't fit all. Every program needs to be specifically designed to that location and that context. We need to assess and plan, but also recognise that when we push one management button in, another one's likely to pop out, and while we can predict some of those and manage them proactively, there are a number that are unpredictable, and we need to remain flexible and adaptable. And really important is collaboration and capacity building. We need to make sure these programs will work in the long term without external assistance, and also we as individuals or any single profession can't solve all of these issues on our own. So it's really nice to come to things like this and continue working together to manage these complex issues. So I'd just like to leave you with some dingo pups and say thank you to my colleagues and for everyone for listening today. And if you've got any questions about the program, please feel free to reach out.